So this will be the fourth part of the video. It's the fourth part of the series, covering the last color of card, which would be the yellow cards. So, summing up the previous videos, this is going to be rating the cards into three primary groups, that being your good cards, your situational cards, and the trash cards. And we've already covered the first three colors of cards. I'd recommend that you go watch those. You can watch these in any order. Just watch them before you watch the fifth one, which is where we talk about the builds. Now, the way we're going to be able to rate cards and determine if they are good, bad, or otherwise is by looking at the different builds that are available to you. So, like with the last videos, there are 7 primary builds that you are going to have in this game. So you're going to have a speed running build that is based around just running through the map as quickly as possible, whether you're trying to speed run, whether you're just for like achievements or as a speedrunner, or you're looking for, just like trying to clear ridden hides as quickly as possible, where it's like, I just want to run through levels. You have melee build. That would be the second build. Now, you can build it a bunch of different ways, but the general gist of it is you're going to run the same core set of cards, where your secondary is always a melee weapon. Support is very similar. There's a lot of different support builds you can do, but you're running the same general set of cards, where you're based around healing, you're based around team play, and reviving. Then you have 2 gun builds. And the gun builds play a very key part in how some characters function. Basically, you're trying to determine if you want 2 primaries or a primary and a secondary with unlimited ammo. If you are... Because how these 2 builds function very differently. A 2 primary build is basically playing whichever 2 primaries are best available, whereas a primary and a secondary, you're building into a particular primary, and your secondary has to complement and offset its weaknesses. The last 2 builds anybody can really run is the pack mule build, where you're trying to carry as much stuff as possible for your team. You're trying to have as many grenades, healing supplies, sometimes quick inventory, copper, ammo. You're just trying to produce as much in the way of resources as possible for your team to carry them and make it easier. And then you also have a copper build, which is just dedicated to having large amounts of copper on hand so that your team can benefit in the safe rooms. So those are the main core builds that we're going to be exploring when we talk about the yellow cards. Now, with the yellow cards are actually probably going to be one of the quicker categories to cover. And the main reason why I say they're one of the quicker categories to cover, for one, there's only 3 pages of cards to cover, and 2, the majority of these cards simply revolve around giving you extra of a certain stat. So it depends. Most of these cards are going to be rated in the good or the situational category. There are very few cards that are going to be listed as bad. And I might artificially pad out the length of the video by comparing some things. So first up, we have the triple scaling, as I call it, where you have the 3 cards that go in upwards of one another. These are going to be for the offensive inventories. You have the grenade pouch, which is good, the double grenade pouch, which is good, and the surplus pouches, which is situational. The grenade pouch is the best of the 3 options because it gives you 1 extra offensive inventory, but it gives you 25% swap speed. That is the main reason why this card is actually superior to the double grenade pouch. The double grenade pouch, while it is, giving you an extra Molotov, an extra frag grenade, and it enables you to carry 3 instead of 2, the 25% swap speed really makes this card much better and much more viable than the double grenade pouch. Double grenade pouch is not a bad card. It's definitely a good card if you want extra grenades, but most of the time I'm going to run the grenade pouch just for the swap speed bonus. The surplus pouches reduce your health by 5% in exchange for giving everybody on your team an extra offensive inventory. This is nice, but it comes at the cost of having slightly lower health and not really contributing all that much. It's essentially a grenade pouch that benefits your whole team, but without the swap speed. If Grenade Pouch didn't have the swap speed bonus, I would recommend the surplus pouches at every point. Similarly, the support cards are going to be scaled exactly the same way. We have the fanny pack, which is good, the shoulder bag, which is also good, and the box O bags, which in my opinion is actually going to be bad, but it can be situational. The box O bags gives everybody on the team an extra support item, which is nice, at the cost of 10% health. Now that's a little bit more of a steep drop off in terms of a health that is lost, although most of the time it's not really that bad. However, fanny pack and shoulder bag are much better. The shoulder bag just gives you 2 extra support. Any medic character needs to run the shoulder bag. There's no reason not to. The fanny pack is better in my opinion because what the fanny pack does is it gives you trauma resist. 15% trauma resist and an extra support inventory for you personally. This is one of the main reasons why that little bit of trauma resist helps keep you alive a lot longer as a support and in much better health, so you don't need to use your support items on yourself as often. So while these two are definitely top tier for particularly for support characters, the Boxo bags really doesn't warrant it most of the time in my opinion. The next 2 cards on the list in my opinion are kind of trashy. Mugger and Highwayman both give you kills by using a secondary slot weapon. So these already are limited in that you can't use primaries. If you're running a double primary, these cards give you no build. The downside realistically though is what it gives you. Mugger has a 5% chance that a kill with a melee weapon spawns ammo, razor wire, and bear traps. Now razor wire and bear traps suck, so the main thing here is ammo. And most melee characters really aren't using their gun that often. This essentially gives you the ability as a melee character to spawn ammo for your team. It's niche at best, and melee builds should not be building into it. Highwayman has a little bit better chance of seeing play. Kills with secondary guns, which opens up a large category, have a 5% chance to spawn ammo, molotovs, or bait jars. Now, bait jars you have to play into with a certain mutation. Molotovs are arguably the best offensive accessory in the game, and ammo, well, like before, ammo is very helpful. The downside to Highwayman is the 5% chance to spawn isn't good enough to take a slot, even on unlimited ammo builds. Admin Reload is a must-have card. This should be in every single lineup that is either not absurd reload speed or built around melee. Like, melee doesn't care and absurd reload speed doesn't care. Everyone else runs Admin Reload. Doesn't matter if it's 1 primary or 2 primaries, because this enables you to just switch weapons and not stop firing. Shotguns, which load 1 shell at a time, will reload 1 shell at a time while stowed. So if you have to switch to a gun and then switch to the shotgun, and you might only have 3 shells in it, you still have 3 shells in it compared to 0 if without Admin Reload. One of the absolute mandatory cards. In my opinion, this is the single best card in the game for any gun character. Any character that's using guns is going to use this card. Now then we have Bounty Hunter. Bounty Hunter is one of the best copper cards in the game in my opinion. Whenever you or your teammate kills a mutation, you gain 10 copper, and this can apply up to 30 times a level. Now, 10 copper doesn't seem like a lot, but you have to understand that you are personally gaining that copper for your teammates getting kills, and you don't have to pick up copper. It's just added to your inventory already. The fact that Bounty Hunter does such a good job of keeping copper up, if everybody on your team is running this, everybody on your team will have such an absurd amount of copper that you won't really have to worry too much, except on higher difficulties where you just are constantly purchasing either health or ammo from the safe room. Bounty Hunter is a really good card. Now, some mutations can prove problematic to kill. This kind of makes you want to seek out mutations to get the most out of your copper. But this is essential for in-game economy. One of the best copper cards in the game. Moving on to the next page, we have Ammo Stash. Now, this is a very good card. And when we talk about cards that you have to consider your build around, this is one of the cards we're talking about. Similar to the green card, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. That card removes your secondary and lets you have a second primary there. This card makes it so that your secondary weapon has unlimited ammo, but it reloads 20% slower. Now, the combo of ammo stash and admin reload is what most one primary characters are going to run. You're building around a particular primary, you pick up a secondary to complement it, and you run ammo stash so you don't have to worry about managing ammo types for anything other than your primary. The reload speed can be offset very easily. Cold brew coffee completely resets it, and because of that reason, it's not a super fast reload time, but even just mandatory reloading is not bad most of the time. Where this card sees value is that it gives you the ability to have a fallback option that is not a melee weapon. So even on higher difficulties where your primary weapon runs out of ammo, you're never going to run out of ammo with ammo stash. You just have to deal with the longer reload. So this is mandatory on certain builds. Now then we have life insurance. Life insurance is a card that gives you personally 2 extra lives, and it gives your team 10% reduced incapacitation trauma. So when you get revived from being incapacitated, you have 10% less trauma damage from that. That is not worth taking it for the team effect. The extra 2 lives is really only good if you plan on, if you're dying and you're going down a lot on higher difficulties, life insurance is good. The downside to it is the card slot becomes less and less useful the more you play and get comfortable. So this is a card I would put in situational. You can get value out of it. You don't necessarily need to. Next up is Wounded Animal. This card kind of sucks. Kills while at critical health, which is, I believe it's 40 and below. Recover 1 health. The downside is that as soon as you get out of that critical health, you no longer get that, which makes sense. It's below 20% of their maximum health. Okay. However, this is also where you're slowed when you're in critical health. However, again, Common Ridden hits you for 3 on average. So Wounded Animal doesn't give you a lot of healing back. It's just not worth it, even in like a kill to heal type build if you're doing something like that. It's not worth seeing play. Compound Interest is a very good card. So there are interesting scenarios where Compound Interest is good. It's good, but you have to fight to get the card slotted. Each cleaner on your team gains 5% of their total copper total as a bonus in each safe room. Now, the 5% copper doesn't seem like a large amount, but any amount of copper you can have is good. Full copper builds, this is incredibly viable. The only real downside to this is if you're specifically going for hives, or if you're in a level where your copper doesn't matter per se. Like, if you're good on resources, if you're good on the guns you have, and the only thing that you're using your copper for would be paying for charges at a first aid cabinet, or if you're buying the team cards, like team ammo, or team offensive inventory, something like that, then this card kind of becomes redundant once you know how to break the inventory system. Next up, you have Lucky Pennies. This is situational. It's one of the weaker copper cards. The way this works is whenever you or your team loots copper, you have a chance to find double the copper. The 35% chance is not a bad chance of finding it. The downside is because it is not a guaranteed amount of copper, it can kind of be difficult to warrant this, especially if you're only bringing 1 copper card. Money Grubbers is a good copper card. Each time your team gets copper, you get 3 additional copper up to 25 times. So this gives you 75 extra copper in theory. The downside is that in all actuality, you're not going to be picking up copper that much. So it's a nice bonus to have because it's passive copper. If you have teammates that are running around picking up all the copper and you yourself aren't doing it, this can give you an additional stream of copper without really doing anything for it. It's just not necessarily the best. Run and gun is good in one particular build and terrible on the rest of the builds. I would say that this is a bad card to run. It's just simply not worth the slot. In speedrun builds, it's a necessity because you're pretty much just taking a shotgun and you just sprint and shoot everywhere. Most builds don't want to use this because they're prioritized on accuracy. You don't get an aim down sight while sprinting, so you take away a lot of builds. Melee characters don't care about this. Supports really don't care about this. It's kind of a bad card. It's pretty much good on shotgun builds and speedrun builds, and even then, shotgun builds in particular kind of don't care. And speedrun builds, I mean, how often are you using a speedrun build? Copper Scavenger is a good card. It's better than some of the other situational copper cards because what it does, it has nothing to do with the sensing copper. That's just a bonus. It just spawns more copper. The fact that it spawns more copper means you are able to have a higher amount of copper in play for your other effects like Compound Interest, Lucky Pennies, Money Grubber, Bounty Hunter to come in play. Now, Share the Wealth is a situational card. The team effect is that every teammate will gain 100 bonus copper at the start of each level. This is a good bonus to have. It's not like game changing, but it's a nice bonus to have if you find yourself like just short like I normally do. This, however, has to be played with Compound Interest to really get value because that extra bonus copper adds to the amount of copper you have before your 5% from Compound Interest. So these two cards kind of have to go hand in hand, and if you are running a copper build, you're going to make room for these three cards: Compound, Share the Wealth, and Bounty Hunter. Those are the main three that you run in a copper build. Next up, we have Shell Carrier. This is a situational card. It's a good card. If you're using shotguns, it's good. 30% shotgun ammo capacity and bonus 10% damage with shotguns. I mean, the Belugian doesn't really care. The only thing that this really helps the Belugian with is the 10% damage. For the pump actions, it's not great. The AA is where it really shines for the extra ammo capacity that the AA-12 has. So because of the fact that you tend to run out of ammo more on that than the other shotguns, this, in my opinion, is great for that shotgun in particular, but any shotgun can benefit from it. Next up, we have Hazard Pay. This gives you 250 bonus copper at the start of every level. This is a good benefit for you if you are running a copper build. If you're trying to play a team-based copper build, it's less effective. This is very good for solo players. Not solo as in solo with bots, but solos with random players they don't know, because it means you're not relying on your teammates for some supplies. That extra 250 is enough to buy a set of bandages, a Molotov. I think it's a toolkit. I don't know if it might, yeah, I think it's the same price as a toolkit, so that you can guarantee you have an item you need. I would say it's situational, though. On a team-based copper build, which is what most of the time you're going to run as a copper build, it's not great. Next up is Safe Room Recovery. This is one of the best cards in the game. This is worth fighting for in any build if you can find the room for it. The way this works is that your team, at the start of every level, will recover 10% of their maximum ammo, 15 health, and 7 trauma damage. Passive healing, passive trauma healing, and free ammo at the start of every level makes this a very good build to have. The downside to it, it doesn't work with hives, and oftentimes the health and trauma that you are recovering isn't enough to get your team up to full health, so you're still going to have to use healing supplies sometimes in those safe rooms, but this is a good card to run the majority of the time just to help keep your team topped off. A lot of times, if you're missing a little bit of ammo, this can help top you off so you don't have to worry about either buying ammo or it puts you in a position where you're like, I don't need ammo. Now, unlike the previous 2 slots, the quick inventory slot cards are generally bad, for the main reason that you're generally not using quick slots that often. If you have to carry any type of mission objective, whether it's a specimen, whether it's C4 charges, whether it's a duffel bag, your quick slot is what gets taken away. In addition to this, the only quick slot items that are really worth using would be the defibrillator for supports, for a quick revive, but I find that the revive speed is better than the defibrillator. I don't like defibrillators. In addition to that, you can also use the ammo pouch, which gives everybody on the team a little bit of ammo. I think the ammo pouches are particularly good if you're playing with somebody that, you know, is using an LMG or an AA-12, any ammo-intensive character, or if you kind of just want to spray and pray. Ammo pouches are good, but you're generally not going to need more than 1, maybe 2 a level, unless you're fighting Abomination. And the other one that sees use is the toolkit, but you're really only using the toolkit once a level. So the toolkit is each level has a secret door that you can unlock and get better weapons, better attachments, free healing supplies, things of that nature. So it's used to open that door. So you have one level you need to use pretty much. You can also use it on alarms, like door alarms, and you can use it on certain environmental things in the environment to make the game easier. You can also use it to open miniguns and flamethrowers, and you can use it to open warp chests. Now, this means that in theory, the toolkit, you want to carry a bunch of toolkits, but realistically, you only need to carry 2 toolkits at most. One for the secret door, and one for either a warp chest, a door, or a door lock. You're never really going to need more than 2 in a level. So, for that main reason, the quick slot inventory is the best of the bunch. I would call this a good card if you want the extra quick slot inventory, because it gives you use speed. You don't need the utility belt. You can, and it can keep you from having to buy extra of, you can kind of just, when you have copper, you can just buy 3 toolkits at the start of a level and just see how long they last you. The tool belt itself, though, is terrible. This is a terrible card because you're giving your team an extra quick slot inventory that they might not need, and it's at the cost of 10% health, which is more significant than the 5%. If it was at 5%, I'd put it in situational. At 10%, I'm not. These next 2 cards kind of go hand in hand, Pinata and Magician's Apprentice. Pinata makes it so that when you kill a Ridden with an accessory, they have a 10% chance to drop an accessory. The accessory that they drop is random. So, it's kind of terrible, because if you're a character that has multiples of a certain type of accessory, or if you've been upgrading, because yes, you could have, you know, 1 green Molotov left, but a common frag grenade isn't worth picking up compared to your green Molotov. So, unless you are reliably just getting that 10% drop to where you're just picking up whatever and throwing it and it spawns, that can be good, but most of the time accessory builds are focused around carrying extra accessories, so Pinata's a terrible card. Magician's Apprentice is a terrible card as well, because the percentage on it is too low to make it viable to see play. It is nice if you can get it to proc. If you can find this in the environment of a level for 500 copper, pick it up. It's one of the best cards you can find in a level, but it's terrible to bring in with you, because you're taking up a mandatory card slot for a 10% chance to not consume accessories when used. Now, this does apply to support inventory and quick inventory, which does make it a bit more impactful compared to Pinata. However, sometimes you'll find yourself using an inventory slot in order to pick up another of the item. Like, if I find a stash of Molotovs and grenades, I'm going to be much more liberal with them because I know I can pick them up before I leave. Same thing with medkits and bandages. I'm going to be more liberal with them. If you get a rare, like, 10% proc off of Magician's Apprentice, and it's like, oh, I was trying to use that up. It kind of can feel kind of sad. It's not a bad card. If the percentage was higher at, say, 20%, this would be competing in every build. But just because of how low the number is, it's kind of hard to justify it. Next up, we have the AI Assistant Module. Now, this is a gadget, which automatically makes it terrible. It's actually a little bit better gadget. And the reason why is it costs 20 sniper ammo, which is relatively reasonable. It replaces your quick slot, which makes it the least impactful. And what it does is it has a 5% item reuse chance that increases by 10% after every item used. But it resets as soon as you reuse that item. Basically, you start at 5% chance anytime you use an accessory that the item will not be consumed. So very similar to Magician's Apprentice. And every item that you use will increase your chances by 10%. So after the first item you use, you go from 5 to 15%, which automatically makes it better than Magician's Apprentice in theory. Two problems. One, it's a fragile. Anytime you take damage, gadget breaks, you have to repay the cost. And problem number two is that it also requires you to use items. If you're not using items, whether you're going through a dry spell, or whether you're just not, like, there's no need to use items, you're not getting value out of this. So while it is one of the better gadgets, the fact that it's a gadget kind of makes it shit. And then we have Belligerent. Belligerent is one of those okay cards that's kind of hard to justify using. It can work, it does a good job, but it has issues with it. So the way this works is you will gain a 4% increase to all damage each time as a horde is called up to 6 stacks, meaning you can get a 24% damage bonus. However, there's a 30-second cooldown between hordes, meaning if your team rapidly is triggering hordes at the same time, you will not get those stacks. In addition to this, whenever a cleaner gets incapacitated or killed, those reset. There are also mandatory horde timers where you'll have one horde active until you complete a mission objective. And because you cannot trigger another horde until you finish that horde, usually it's to end a level, this can kind of screw you over. It's meant to carry over from round to round. On higher difficulties, you're never getting this off. You want to run cards that help get you out of situations, whereas this card isn't good for that. Next up is Food Scavenger. Food Scavenger is a situational card. It's a must-have on Hang, and it's good for most characters as a backup supporting role. It makes it so that you can sense nearby food items, it increases the amount of food items in the world, and you restore additional health per food item, which is nice. However, the variation in food items does make it to where if you're getting things that don't give you health, then this doesn't apply. It restores additional health. So if it doesn't restore any health up front, it's not great. In addition, there's food items that restore health and trauma damage in the safe room at the end of the level. They don't do anything in level. This is a good card, but other support characters outside of Hang really aren't working with this. Last card is Ugly Cacnes. This is a fun card. I like mementos. I think they're really cute. Mementos can give you a nice bonus on supply points, but most of the time, just running through campaigns as fast as you can net you a decent amount of supply points. So, essentially, this just increases the number of mementos in the world. This isn't a card that's worth running unless you are specifically trying to help a new player bum rush up and get extra supply points. In which case, it's pretty good then. Alright, so that about covers the yellow cards and what we think of the yellow cards. I hope this video was helpful. The next video that we're going to do is probably either going to be later tonight or tomorrow. And that is going to be discussing some of the builds a bit more. The builds that I kind of have pre-set up already. So, thank you for